Welcome back to Venus Improbable Dream. When I'd first arrived to today's club session, I'd been somewhat looking forward to having something to occupy my brain a little more, and hopefully distract me from my worries. However, it hasn't been going well. My usual ability to focus is currently so out of whack I've been all over the place, not up to my regular standard. I'm relieved when we finish our last run through, and I'm free to sulk off and hide in that little practice room. As I pack my things away, I pray that Kudo-sensei doesn't come over and try to talk to me about my disappointing performance. It's not disappointing whatsoever, man. It's just a little bit distracted, that's all. Luckily he doesn't. Perhaps he's sensing that I'm not in the best place right now and wants to give me some space. Shouldering my bag, I escape into the corridor, the safe corridor, and into the safe room of my safeness. As the door clicks shut gently behind me, I feel a little shift in my mood, although oddly, I can't actually tell if it's a positive thing or not. I feel so out of touch with myself today. Hi Kakeru, you okay? That's a more complicated question than it usually is for me right now. Yeah? I head over to the piano, but Haruka follows the sound of my footsteps with her eyes, turning towards me as I sit down. You sound a bit down. I guess she's spent enough time around me by now to be able to tell when I'm not my usual self. Is there such a thing as a usual self, my man? Yeah, just had a lot on my mind recently. I'm not sure if I want to go into it, even with Haruka, at least not yet. Anyway, I think I need to get my head around my feelings more before I can start putting things into words. Putting things into something. You did sound a little distracted. How'd you know me that well? I don't want to elaborate, and thankfully she seems to understand, although she looks a little hesitant, a hint of disappointment in her face. I was going to ask you something, but it can wait. What would that something be exactly? What is it? I don't want to ruin our hour together, so I'm still willing to hear her out with whatever she wants to talk about. She seems to deliberate over whether to spill the beans or not, and then eventually decides to ask her question. She's a very thoughtful individual, she is. She doesn't splurt out her feelings and stuff like that. She is a very meticulous individual who thinks of stuff over before putting them forward, especially for Kakeru, who Haruka can empathize with. Well, oh, hold on a second. You invited me to your house, and it was really nice of you. I enjoyed it, so I was wondering if maybe you wanted to come to mine sometime? Yes. Learn more about Haruka and possibly her parents too. Oh, I didn't expect that. But it makes sense that she'd want to return the offer back to me. It's thoughtful of her, but I just don't know. The prospect of visiting her house and trying to function normally around her parents seems pretty much out of reach for me, especially with the way I'm feeling at the moment. Before I can come up with a reply, Haruka speaks up again. You really don't have to. I know it's a big thing. I won't be sad if you don't. You would be a little disappointed though, or a little bit taken aback in a way. Even if you don't really admit it, you still feel like the sense of maybe there's something else that we could have done in order to ensure that our friend could come round and see me, to see my parents and stuff like that. Somehow I can't believe that she won't be at least a little disheartened if I turn the offer down. Not deterred by my silence, she continues. My parents have asked to meet you too. I told them we made friends, and they were really pleased. Same as yours, really. Yeah. Like, when Kakeru's parents initially learned about the friendship that sprouted between Kakeru and Haruka, they were very pleased, so I'm sure that Haruka's parents would also probably want a similar outcome as well. She exhales a gentle chuckle, and I nod to myself. I definitely know how her parents must have been, judging by mine. It'd be just like at yours, if he did come. We could have something to eat, and then the two of us could study again. My parents would give us space, if we want it. I'll think about it. Can I let you know soon? I don't want to just say no straight off the bat, but I'm going to need time to properly consider it. Haruka nods instantly, understanding my worries without me having to voice them. Totally. Whenever you want. Thank you. She seems generally fine with my hesitance, and it puts me slightly at ease. I guess I gave her the same curiosity when I'd invited her to my place. She hadn't given me an answer on the spot either. Yep, it's something to really think about, especially when it's outside your comfort zone. It's not something that you could just say yes or no to on the spot. You've got to really think about it. Am I making the right decision here? And if I'm not, then I should consider it over before making a final decision. Okay. The two of us grow quiet for a minute, letting the slightly tense moment pass, and then we begin to practice. We all have different things that holds us back in life, and the stem of your concerns, Kakeru, is due to the mental isolation that you've put upon yourself, not by choice, but by a means to be able to cope with what you have, is just a little effect of what we see on screen right now. I bet Haruka eats with her parents. I'm not entirely sure about their relationship, but I can tell that she's closer with them than I am with mine. It does make me a little jealous inside, though I'd never admit it. But your means of being able to cope with what you have were through the lack of social contact, even with those that are closest to you. So with the mark that is beneath your right eye, that is the stem of your mental isolation, in a way. Your social isolation. And now I've been invited to be a part of that scenario, to meet her parents and join their family unit for an evening. It's something that both interests me and repulses me in an almost equal measure. Yes, there's a bit of a duality sort of thing here going on. My usual fears are rearing their ugly head in protest, but the side of me that longs for a more normal lifestyle wants to say yes. I just don't know which to listen to, which to trust. But before meeting Haruka, you never had that side of me that longs for a more normal lifestyle. The rearing their ugly heads part would always be at the front and center. I've been thinking of texting Haruka tonight to give her an answer as to whether I'm going to accept her offer or not. But I don't think I can just yet. That's fine, my mind is still too overloaded with what happened previously and this. Morning. I'd slept pretty well, but as soon as I'd woken up, the matter of Haruka's invitation had popped straight back into my mind. It's been plaguing me this whole time. Fixing my tie, I grimly note that she'll probably be expecting an answer today. I feel as though if I delay it any longer, she might think that I never wanted to go in the first place, and I'm just stalling to prevent her from having to hurt her feelings. Don't do that. Don't think that, man. I think she understands. Like she needed time to think about whether she would want to go around yours or not because of your invitation. So I think she understands your circumstance at this point in time. Thing is, I haven't really made any progress with it in my head since last night. I'm still just as unsure about it as I had been when I'd gone to sleep. Having got everything together, I head downstairs. I go to leave, but for some reason I feel slightly hesitant. Mum glances back at me, surprised I'm still here, and turns the tap off. Okay, everything alright? Yeah, what is going on? Maybe I should tell her. She'll probably understand why I'm nervous about it. Somewhat reluctant, I step into the kitchen, and Haruka invites me to her house. I get the sentence out and stand there awkwardly as she grows excited. Hey. Oh, wonderful, that'll be nice. As soon as she starts enthusiasing about it, she realizes how difficult it will be for me, and her expression drops slightly. As I said in a previous episode or so, little baby steps. Little baby steps to gain progression. I know some of those were silly. Do you think you'll give it a try? Give it a good old college try. Not sure. I feel as though I have a million things to say about how scared I am, but those two little words will have to carry them all. Mom nods, seeming to sympathize, taking a deep contemplative breath, mind you. Well, you don't have to go if you don't feel up to it, but I bet you'll have a good time if you do. Haruka's a proper friend, isn't she? Not like those boys you were meant to meet up with that other time. Hey now! That was for an entirely different reason, and we were probably thrown into an environment which would be too uncomfortable for us anyway. So, A, don't go prejudicing those boys like that, and B, it's a case of that scenario would have been uncomfortable for us anyways, even if we were in a library with the same people. So don't say that about those people in our music club, for goodness sakes. It'll be a quiet place, less people. And you know what? Haruka's parents will probably be very understanding. Yes, because of the hardships of having a daughter which they couldn't see. Or with which Haruka couldn't see, not the parents couldn't see their daughter. Having a blind daughter must have been quite an experience. Yes, it is. I imagine so anyways. I'm sure they're great when it comes to people being nervous. I haven't really thought about her parents in that much depth. I figured that it must be used to accommodate Haruka, but their compassion probably goes a little deeper than that. Having raised a disabled child from birth, they must have seen it all. Every possible problem, every bad day, every nervous breakdown. Hell, my nerves might even seem mild to them. Not when they're so ingrained into you, my man. When your problems become so ingrained within you, then it really is just as bad as any kind of disabled defect. Who knows how bad Haruka's fears might have been before now. She's got a point. I nod pensively and she continues. You know, your dad and I could even go with... No, that's the last thing we want, actually. because if you think about it, right, when somebody brings round another half for the first time, I'm not saying this is true with all parents, but the first thing they do is bring out baby photos. For some unexplainable reason, baby photos are somehow at the forefront of all of this. And I'm thinking, just why? Why does our past have to be such a huge influence for our future? If it helped make you feel better, I'm sure it would be lovely to meet Haruka's parents. Oh god, no thanks. Can you imagine that? Sorry, Haruka. We'll have to bring mommy and daddy with me so they can hold my hand while your parents talk to me. Is that okay? No. I look like a real emotional basket case. Lost in my thoughts, I neglect to answer Mum, but my reverie is disturbed when she turns to check the clock. Are you going to be late? You better get going. Oops. Just think it over, okay? I'm sure Haruka won't mind. Whatever you decide. I nod, hoping that for everybody's sake she's right. I'm sure your mum's right, for goodness sakes. I had to dash to school in a sloppy half jog, but I made it just on time. I've been startled by a text from Haruka on the way, asking to meet up for lunch, so here we are. I've been fretting a little, but she hadn't mentioned anything about the invite yet, so perhaps she's still giving me time. That is exactly it, because an impatient person would always be texting like every 10 minutes to say, have you made up your mind yet? Have you made up your mind yet? No, but Haruka is in the same predicament as Kakeru was when Kakeru initially invited Haruka around, so Haruka exactly knows what's going on here. Which section do you find the hardest? I scan the book in front of me, locating the part of the piece that I struggle with the most. Bars 36 to 56. Okay, usually the middle of the music is usually the most compact and impactful, but also the most complex. She nods and consults her own braille copy of the music, feeling it out until she's at the same point as me. Though we're in the CD room, we decided to study some sheet music together rather than listen to anything. It's just a nice undisturbed place to be, and we hadn't really fancied sitting at a table in the main library room with so many other students around. All the possible noises and mostly eyes. Haruka reaches the section in the music I refer to, nodding in realization. Ah yes, this part. It's like Perpedibium mobile, isn't it? What is that? As somebody who is not an expert in music, I have no idea what that is. Like, what? I never heard that term before. Haruka picks up on my confusion through my lack of reply. Yeah, usually you're confused. Wait a minute. I just realised I can't use a confused look to show that I am confused because of the lack of being able to see me. My bad. But I think it is definitely because of a lack of reply in which Haruka picks up on. Perpetual motion. It's when there's a part of a piece, essentially a long stream of fast notes played with no break, so it's basically the same note tapping over and over again. It's like Guitar Hero in a way. Oh, that makes sense. It certainly feels like that's the case with the piece we're looking at. It's been giving me trouble since I started learning it. The advantage with this is that the notes are pretty close to each other, so you don't have to worry about jumping all over the place. I think practicing it to a much slower tempo and then gradually speeding it up is the way to get it exactly like I said earlier. Baby steps. Gotta do it one part at a time. Learn the part first and then catch up with the pace of the music. If you try and do everything at once, you're gonna go balls up. It's like playing golf and trying to prioritize power over control first. You need to get control first before you can apply power. Okay, she's probably right. She's recommended that technique in the past and it's worked to some degree. I think that's all over for... I think that's all for this piece then. Alright, any others? We close our books, Haruka slipping hers back into her folder, and there's a short pause we consider what to do next. When Haruka speaks up, she looks a little shy. About the offer? By the way, I was just wondering. Oh, I think this is it. This is where it's going to turn. Possibly north or south. Have you thought about coming over? There we go. Yep, there it is. The question I'm finding almost impossible to answer. Yeah, it's hard to know what to say without sounding rude or pathetic. Or both. Haruka cocks her head to the side, looking serious but understanding. You really don't have to. If it's too much, I was going to say though, you might find it okay from a musical standpoint. I have a big collection of classical music, and if you like, we could sit and listen to some. It'd be a bit like being in here. No strangers or anything. It can be just the two of us, if you want. I'd feel pretty guilty if Haruka has to shoo her parents away to help me feel more comfortable, but I guess my own parents had gone into the lounge when we started studying. A bit like being here. That idea does appeal to me somewhat. If we could recapture some of the calming energy that this place has there, then it might help me out. That's cool. I'll think about it a little longer if that's okay. I'd rather make sure I take another opportunity to properly weigh it up, as opposed to trying to make a decision on the spot right now. I feel kind of bad, but Haruka nods, seeming unraveled. Indeed, it's because you two can understand your own predicaments, because you both go through similar experiences and endeavours, even if the cause of that is truly different, but the psychological implications are pretty much the same, minus the individualistic experiences themselves. I'm lucky she's pretty patient. Yeah, not everyone would be patient. People will be asking for an answer right away sometimes. I hate being put on the spot, by the way. Sorry, I'm taking a while. She shakes her head. It's okay. Don't be. I was just as nervous when you asked me. So that is also another reason as to why she's understanding, because she's been in the same spot herself. We both laugh slightly, recognizing our similarities, and then she begins to flip through her music folder, apparently wanting to divert the conversation. So, what shall we look at now? Grateful for her tolerance for my indecisiveness, I follow her lead, letting the matter rest and turning my attention back to the music. Well, then maybe I should you what now? Yeah, okay, what are you getting at? Shifting in my seat, I fish my phone out of my pocket and type out a text to Haruka, holding my breath as I read it back to myself. Sorry it took so long. I can come over if you'd like. Hey, that's a sport. At a man. Well done. My thumb hesitates over the send button as I let out my breath. I press it. There's no return here, my man. Great. How's tomorrow after school? Whoa. That quickly. My stomach flutters as I read the reply. Tomorrow's pretty sudden, but think about it. I reckon I'd better do it soon. Exactly, otherwise you're gonna have it in your head for much longer. Before I lose my nerve. Also, it's Friday tomorrow, so I don't have the best time, for whatever reason. I'll have a whole weekend to just chill out and get it over with. I guess that means it's okay. Standing up, my limbs feel wooden. I head back downstairs, phone in hand. This time I hear both parents' voices coming from the kitchen, so I steady my nerves and head toward the sound. Hello. They examine the contents of the fridge, debating what we should have for dinner. I go unnoticed for a few seconds, probably due to the way I crept tentatively in. Yes, after a moment, Mum catches sight of me over Dad's shoulder and almost does a double take, having not expected to see me there. There's a face we know, but it's not normally here. Oh, Kakeru, did you need something? Both of them turned to face me, and I felt very put on the spot, but gathering what little courage I have, I speak up. Can I go to Haruka's tomorrow? For a moment, it's as though life itself has been paused. My parents don't react, apparently so taken aback by what I asked that they're frozen in place. Then after a second or two, I'm bombarded with a response I expected. Of course you can. After school? Yep, I nod and the two of them grin like Cheshire Cats. Mom even squeezes Dad's arm in disbelief. Sorry, Dad's arm. Oh, I'm so pleased, Kakeru. Yes, you can go, and you'll have a great time. I'm sure of it. I'm burning under the glow of her excitement, but there's still something nice about it in a way. We have a very brief chat about times and whether I want dinner when I get home, and then they let me go, looking positively vibrant. As I start to head out of the room, Dad pipes up. Okay, remember, if you change your mind or it's not going well, you can always give us a text. I'm sure it will go swimmingly well. This is with someone, and the only person that we know, who is A, outside of our family, and B, is a trustworthy friend. He nods seriously, though I'm still smiling. I nod back, thankful for his concern. I'm glad that they'd be willing to pick me up if I started panicking too much. Feeling bashful, I patter awkwardly into the lounge, heading for the stairs. As I go, I glance down at my phone still in my hand and send a message I hadn't really thought I'd be sending reply to Haruka at last. Tomorrow is good. I just need to check with my parents to see if it was okay. Somebody doesn't like class. Yeah, God, time is going so slowly. We're only halfway through the first class of the day and already feel like I've been here an age. I guess it's the nerves. I guess it's being bored in a class. That's probably why. When you're bored doing something, it feels like it goes on for longer because you're not applying yourself to it. You apply yourself to areas which are not inside where you are right now. In a way, I should be thankful that the day's going slow, as it means that I'm not being rushed into the impending, unsettling situation I'm dreading. Strange, it doesn't feel as good as it probably should. I feel like I'm in some sort of purgatory. Hey, I played a game called Purgatory recently. Let's see. Hi, Kakeru. Hi. There's a strange silence between us, and then Haruka speaks up, her tone a little more serious. Let's see, you honestly don't have to come tonight, if you're too nervous about it. Damn it, how much there is to read, even when I'm not being seen? Putting myself together a little more, I reply, it's alright, I want to go, I'm just, you know. Yeah, I don't need to elaborate for her to get the picture. Besides, you came to mind, so I can't let Haruka be the only brave one here. I've got to try to reciprocate. Her expression relaxes slightly as I say this. Yeah, but we did both manage to go to each other's classrooms too. I think that was a bit worse than this. You've got a point actually. Going into a room full of strangers in a public environment, nah. But going somewhere where there's fewer people in a private area, such as someone else's house, is quite good. She has a point. Quarantining each other in rooms full of people is probably more traumatic than going to each other's houses. We did, although, well, it was pretty a knowing look spread across her face. Yeah, it was kind of horrible in a way. In contrast to how nervous I've been feeling so far, I almost want to laugh out loud as a pair of us. It seems that neither of us are built for this stuff, experiencing this stuff. Maybe we shouldn't spend so much time around. Why? Is that meant to be a joke? I hope that is a joke. Thankfully, she picks up on the fact that I'm only joking and starts giggling, causing my own laughter to escape. Okay, it provides a welcome back in the tension. My pulse started to return to normal, somewhat. Once our amusement subsided, Haruka pipes up, a smile still on her face. Well, if we're destined to go down, at least we can go down together. This is not a sinking ship, for goodness sakes, Haruka. Like the worst pair of adventurers ever, all that as well. We'll both get killed by the same avalanche. After another small bout of chuckles, we grow quiet again. I was just about to suggest we started practicing when Haruka beats me to the punch. You know... Her voice a little softer than before. Those things were scary, but, well... What things? I'm glad we made friends. Yeah, I'd expected her to say that, and it's both strange and touching to hear. I never imagined that anyone would be happy to know me. Come on now. You just gotta open yourself up. You gotta get out of that shell. It sounds simple in words, but doing it is an entirely different ballgame. I can only ever imagine how difficult it would be to break out of a shell like that, to break out of a continuous cycle. I say it mainly to avoid leaving her hanging, but underneath the awkwardness, I think a part of me had meant it. Haruka continues to smile in my direction, a moment of relative peace falling upon us. After a few seconds, she pulls herself out of whatever daydream she'd been in. Shall we practice then? That sounds great. This is where we usually say goodbye, and as if that were the case, Haruka turns to me like she always does. For a moment, she looks as though she's bracing herself for disappointment. Ah, Haruka. So, she fiddles with her jacket awkwardly, and for a horrible moment, my brain, apparently set on self-sabotage, conjures up a memory of my panic attack. Ouch. Don't think about that. This is not that kind of time. You're not in a scenario where you're with random people in a busy place. This is a quiet place with 1 or 3 other people. Or 2 other people, I don't know. Reminding me that it could happen again. It will not happen again, and don't you dare let it happen again. But as torturous as that fact is, I don't want to listen. This situation is not the same as that one that had been. Besides, the thing that clinched it for me is Haruka's expression. She told me multiple times that she wouldn't be disappointed if I didn't go, but looking at her now, I could tell that that's not true. She's already got that hurt in her eyes that suggests that she's already convinced herself that I'm going to change my mind and go home instead. Then don't be like that. Become the person that you don't think Haruka is expecting you to be. Go with her. Accept her invitation, for goodness sakes. That, coupled with the logical reasoning that I've attempted to coach myself with, causes me to open my mouth. Yeah, let's go. I force myself to move, stepping up beside her to face the direction of her house, signaling that I'm ready to leave. For a moment, she simply follows my footsteps with her eyes, and then her worried expression gives way to a relieved smile. There we go. Yeah, I'm sure she's just as nervous about it as Kakeru is. Neither of us speak much as we head down the pathway. But at least it's not raining this time, unlike a certain other time in which we headed down this way together, when it was raining. And then that's when a certain student decided that it was a good idea to say about that to her friends. And then those friends shared with those friends and stuff like that, and that's how news and gossip goes down. But for goodness sakes, why? Why is romance such a stingy subject at school? It's because people like to make fun of you. That's why. Neither of us speak as much as we head down the pathway, reaching the leafy stretch that runs alongside a park. But I recognise from the only time I've had done this. Goodness sakes, would you just speak Flare this journey previously? In a way, it's somewhat comforting not to have to make a conversation on this tense. However, she does pipe up once more, probably in an attempt to put me at ease. At least you don't need an umbrella this time. There we go. Haruka remembers. Yeah, that'd been fun. By fun, I mean nerve-wracking. Yeah. Our travels remain undisturbed, the only sounds being the repetitive patters of our footfalls, and the odd bird chirping from a tree. Once we leave the park area and get onto the end of Haruka Street, my stomach starts to perform flips. How dare it perform flips, for goodness sakes. This is really happening, isn't it? Oh no, not this music again. This music usually indicates bad things are going to happen. Or is it going to tease us? Oh god, I've got to try and stay calm. It can't possibly be as bad as my paranoid brain is making it out to be. Haruka's parents will be nice and understanding. Exactly. I won't be judged or questioned. Exactly. It'll be alright. It will be more than alright. Haruka retrieves her keys, unlocking her front door after a moment's fumbling and heads inside, inviting me to follow suit. Taking a shaky breath, I still myself and comply. And we've got a different living room here. I was just expecting to see the same living room that we have in Kakeru's place. You know, the TV to the left and the sofa to the right. I know for you guys it's the other way around, so it will be TV to the left, sofa to the right. This is my right hand, this is my left hand. The two of us remove our shoes and Haruka directs me to take a pair of guest slippers, as I'd done at my house. When we're ready, we head into the lounge. Though I'm terrified, I'm slightly distracted from it for a moment as I take a look around the room. It becomes instantly apparent to me that Haruka's family must have more money than mine does. Money is not the object at the end of the day. It's your wealth and your happiness. Although money is part of wealth, but it doesn't define your happiness. Many decorations are dotted around, and the furniture is of rather nice quality. It's already looking to be an impressive house, and I almost feel like I'm too common to be there. Somewhat surprised, I find myself asking Haruka about it. You have a nice house. What do your parents do for work? That is a good question. At least one of them must be well paid if they can afford this. Haruka turns to me as she replies. Let's see. My dad's an antiques dealer, he has his own shop, and my mom's an illustrator for books. Both of those sound quite well received payments. That's a little unconventional, but it's quite cool really, considering her mom's creative nature at least. It's no wonder that they seem to want to nurture Haruka's musical pursuits. I feel as though I understand Haruka a little better just from this knowledge alone. Let's go through to the dining room. My parents should be making food for us soon. Oh, sure. Reminded of the task at hand, my trepidation leads back to my throat. Into my throat, sorry. I do my best to swallow it, and follow her lead as she heads out of the lounge. Okay, she walks ahead of me, and just as I'm about to head through the doorway after her, voices suddenly pipe up, hers included. Hello, Haruka. School alright? So that must be one of the parents then. Yes, it was fine. I brought Kakeru with me. Her parents. My limbs stiffen, and I am momentarily unable to enter the room. Freezing by the doorframe, I'm struck with an overwhelming wish that neither of them would have to see my face. But I know that it's not possible. Steel yourself. Come on, you can do this. It takes me a good few seconds of attempted steady breathing and mental deliberating before I loosen up again. Just enough to edge into the room properly. And as I do, I spy Haruka talking to who I assume is her mother. If you can hear who the voice is, it probably wouldn't be the father then, if you already imagined that it would be her mother. Let's see. Upon hearing me approach, Haruka steps backwards a little in order to be closer to me. Okay, I think it's mainly to put a bit of distance between her mum and us so that I'm not having to stand too close to people. I silently thank her for her consideration in my head. Mom, this is Kakeru. I dare myself to glance ever so briefly at the figure in front of me. She eyes me casually, and after a moment of what seems to be realization, she smiles in a manner that's somewhat detached, but not in a cold way, and then turns back to stir the pan that's on the stove next to her. Lovely to meet you, Kakeru. Feel free to make yourself at home. Sit wherever you'd like. This food will be ready soon. She seems fairly nice. For a moment, I'm slightly taken aback by her greeting. I expected the usual prolonged eye contact. But people usually only judge at first glance when seeing somebody for the first time without hearing them audibly. Possibly an uncomfortable glance at my condition, and then awkward conversation. But she'd reacted so coolly to my appearance as almost as though she hadn't noticed. And that tells you a lot, doesn't it? If you notice that there's something that is not usually on somebody's face, but decide to look at you as a person, then that must make you feel that Haruka's mother is looking at you as a person, not as a person with an object on you. It's not down to your condition at the end of the day, it's down to you as a person. I'm assuming that Haruka's told them not to be overbearing due to my nerves, but of course she doesn't know that it's possible. It's because of my looks I'm that way in the first place. There's no possibility that her parents would have been prepared not to make a big deal of it. I guess they're just as good at this sort of thing. Her mum hadn't seemed bothered at all. I almost felt normal for a second. But for goodness sakes, what is normal? Like, if we were all normal, then the world would be boring. There's got to be some things to throw a surprise or a dramatic or a difficult equation into that. That's what spices up life. But the condition itself is not a way to spice up life, but it's just it's different. Whether it's positive or negative, it's different. But in Kakeru's perspective, it definitely is a negative thing. I stutter for words out, and then Haruka addresses me gently as if not to make me jump. Let's go sit down. She starts to head into the adjoining room, and I bow my head to her mom as we pass. She smiles again, turning back to her cooking without a fuss, and I follow Haruka diligently. Okie dokie, we enter yet another visibly appealing room, not appearing, although it is very appealing. Light colours all round, and I spy what must be Haruka's dad sitting at the far end of the table, poring over a laptop and a pile of paperwork. I much prefer a well-lit light room than a dark room. My oldest brother once decided it would be a good idea to paint his bedroom black. Like, how small do you want a room to feel, for goodness sakes? Haruka crosses the room ahead of me to greet him, giving me another moment to collect myself, and I take it shakily. Ah, there you are. I watch the two of them talk briefly, noting that he looks very relaxed himself. I lumber closer to them, my hands trembling slightly, and then Haruka gestures towards me. Kakeru is here. I automatically lower my head, disguising it as a sort of bow, and he regards me for a second before smiling easily, just as his wife had done. Kakeru, nice to see you. But this isn't the first time we met. The first time was when you collected your daughter up to then take her back home. So surely this is not the first time, because it definitely was Haruka's dad that picked up Haruka from Kakeru's place. He leans back in his chair regarding his laptop for a moment, but only for a moment. Sorry about all of this, I need to stop doing my work. Take a seat. This is the only time I get to sort out my finances and see whether I've actually broken even or not. He goes back to whatever he was doing, shifting? Yeah, that is shifting through some of the papers. I was about to say sifting or something like that. Like cooking? Sifting flour through? Okay, let's move on. And again, I'm left feeling oddly surprised at his reaction to my face. There had hardly been one. And that's the key here. You don't judge somebody by their appearance, but by who they are. There's no use giving first glances and prejudiced thoughts at first sight, otherwise that just makes us all bad people. Even when most other people try not to make a big deal of it, there's always still a widened-eyed or a shocked expression hidden a second too late. The contrast between that usual treatment and this is very pronounced. Very good. My train of thought is interrupted by Haruka pulling out a chair and sitting down, so I follow suit and sit next to her. Thoughtfully, she's taken the seat close to her dad, leaving me the seat furthest away. Very courteous. I do have to marvel at her for a moment. She's blind, and yet she still manages to analyze the room and think of everything that might affect me. As soon as we sit down, her mom comes bustling into the room. This is ready now, everyone. She places several plates and bowls of food into the middle of the table, taking a sideways glance at her husband as she does. Are you still working? We've got a guest. Knock it off. I hope this is playful. Both Haruka and her dad start to laugh, and her mum grins to show that her cheer must have been in good humour. I know, give me a sec. He finishes whatever he's doing and then begins to pile everything up again and move it out of the way. There's a generally relaxed air about everything, and I get the idea that Haruka's parents are pretty chilled out, both with each other and amongst others. The two of them then disappear into the kitchen to bring the rest of the food in place, and as soon as they do, Haruka turns to me and murmurs quietly, "Are you okay?" I can sense that she knows exactly how loaded a question it is for me, and I appreciate her looking out for me. Yeah, did you, tell them that I'm nervous? It's kind of humiliating to ask, but if she had, I know it'd only be because she wants to make sure that her parents didn't scare me off. The bashful change in her demeanor answers my question before she does. I did not to. You know, I just want to make you feel comfortable. Ah, she doesn't need to explain herself. I'm glad that she had warned them, since they'd been so calm around me as a result. It's okay. Thanks. She continues to look worried for a moment, but only for a brief moment, and then slowly nods and accepts my words. Her parents return with the rest of the things, taking their own seats, so we grow quiet and help ourselves to food along with them. Wonder what kind of food it is. I feel very awkward keeping my head down and focusing on just eating. After a few seconds of no conversation, Haruka's mom speaks up. So, Haruka tells us you met at the music club. That's exciting. Are you two helping each other out? Yes. Although, it's largely Haruka helping out Kakeru, not Kakeru helping out Haruka in the music department. In the emotional department and being friends, I think it's a 50-50 sort of thing, you know. They're both helping each other out with their own dispositions. She directs a question more at Haruka than me, probably in an attempt to take some of the pressure away from me. And though they've probably already talked about this, Haruka answers her, yeah, we've been finding the club pieces and working on them together. It's quite fun. I nod in agreement, trying to drum up the courage to add something myself, but before I can manage it, her mum continues. That's great. I think life's too short not to have hobbies, so it's wonderful that you can do that in school. Indeed, after her statement, her husband chips in. Definitely, especially when it comes to this one. He nods towards Haruka, clarifying his gesture for her by touching her briefly on the wrist. She smiles sheepishly. She's always loved music, right from the beginning. We just had to get her a flute when she asked for one. I think flutes, I'm not blind myself, but I can probably feel that a flute is a great instrument to play if you're visually impaired, because it's something that is not just something that you can see, but it's something that you feel. It's like a harmonica as well. Actually, a harmonica would be even better than a flute, because a harmonica you just have to hold out into your mouth, but a flute you have to kind of feel how long the flute is and stuff like that. You can tell I've never played a flute in my life. Ah. He smiles lovingly at her, and her mum gains a similar expression. Oh, and doesn't she sound so lovely when she plays? Aw, that's an embarrassing question, for goodness sakes. They both gaze at Haruka with admiration, and though she can't see it, she can evidently sense it, and she begins to blush heavily. Stop it! She pretends to squirm in embarrassment, and all three of them burst out laughing. In the warm moment, I take the opportunity to look at them all sneakily while they're temporarily distracted. I don't think I've ever seen Haruka so relaxed. It's like all the weight of her anxiety is lifted when she's at home. Like, she can let down her umbrella when she's at home, but when outside of home, she has to lift up the umbrella in a means to try and protect herself from the outside world. I guess this is the real Haruka that nobody at school sees. It's not incredibly different from the Haruka that I see in the little practice room and the CD room, when we're hidden away from everyone else, but there's just something slightly different about her. It's pretty nice to see. The laughter dies down and I allow myself to absorb the harmless atmosphere and use it to give myself a little courage, speaking up timidly for the first time since sitting down. I played the piano as a kid, but gave it up. I started again for the club. Both parents eye me with interest momentarily, before averting their gazes again considerably. Well, it sounds like a good thing you picked it back up again. I'm sure you'll make more progress in that sort of environment. Okay. I nod in reply, as is definitely true, although I won't admit to them that it's mostly thanks to their daughter as opposed to the club itself that I'm improving. Want to seem open to the conversation despite my reservations, I ask a question. Did you always draw? Haruka pipes up as I mention this. I told him you were an illustrator. Well, actually, no. I had a very normal and boring job. What is a normal job when I was younger? Just to pay the bills and get by. You know how it goes. I started to draw as a way to unwind and discovered that I just really enjoyed it. It was very difficult to try to break out of what I was doing and go into illustration professionally. A real challenge, but luckily I managed it. And that is the good thing about a challenge. It is a long, harsh road, but if you manage to make it to the other side of that road, you know you've accomplished something. She smiles nostalgically as she recounts this to me, and I catch her husband eyeing her with affection. She speaks. I don't think I've ever seen my... Okay. I think it's important to figure out what you're passionate about early in life, instead of having to do it the hard way like I did. Yes, but people grow at different rates. We don't always find the thing that we want to do in our life and pursue it for God knows how many years. Like for some of us, I'm 27 and I still haven't figured out what I want to do with my life. That's why I encouraged Haruka with her music when she started becoming interested in it. If she wants to pursue it professionally one day, I'd say she should go for it. Haruka giggles quietly at her mother's support. And I'm partially bowed over by another wave of, I don't know what exactly. There's a lot of love in this household but expressed openly. Very different to my family. Haruka's dad then speaks up. And I fell into my job totally by accident. Okay, my bad. Apologies to hear that. I had to clear out his house before we sold it, and came across what I initially thought was a load of junk in his attic. Hey! Antiques are not junk! When I looked into selling it, it turned out that some of it was actually antique and quite valuable. So he made a nice chunk of money from it. It just sparked something for me, I suppose, and I ended up seeking out and selling antiques for a living, and opened up a shop. Sometimes our passion and love comes out of stuff that the root of its origins turns out to be something that is completely by accident. It's like some of the best inventions of the world were not planned, they were just found upon by accident, by trying to do something else and then stumbling upon that thing. So it went from a hobby into a career and then an obsession. Everybody laughs again, his wife shaking her head, and I get the theme that he is very into his work. Funny how unexpected things come about from something small, like a hobby or an interest, huh? Indeed. A flying response, nod in response, and as well, and as we all go back to our food, I ponder his words. They remind me of myself and of Haruka in the music club. I suddenly had no idea what was about to happen when Mitsumo Sensei had called me up to his desk just under a month ago to talk to me, and when I learned that I was essentially being forced, or I strongly coerced, into trying the music club, I've been horrified. It had seemed like life as I'd known it had taken a turn for the worse, but now that I realised what has actually happened as a result, I guess it's not entirely the case. I've had some truly terrible times, but I've also taken up my old hobby and got better at it, found places other than my secluded bench I can relax in at school, and made my first real friend. I might still quiver with terror half the time, but I'm doing something at least, and I'm sitting here right now, in somebody else's house, doing my best to make conversation, instead of hiding in my bedroom, shut off from the rest of the world. And that little baby step of progression is starting, and being here alone justifies that. I think it's a good thing that I joined the club after all, indeed. The four of us continue eating while... No, I think the best part of joining the music club is your curiosity getting the better of you and started walking down the corridor because of the sound that was playing. The four of us continue eating with scattered chat until we're all contentedly full. Haruka's parents stand up and begin to clear the table, assuring us that we don't need to help. Haruka, why don't you show Kakeru your music collection? Haruka nods enthusiastically at his suggestion. Hey now, I was just about to say that. Do you want to see? Sure, I think. We definitely do. Maybe. We slide from our seats and Haruka takes me over to the opposite side of the room, where a relatively high quality stereo system sits above a cabinet that looks to be full of CDs, as well as a large stack of what seems to be vinyl records. They must have a player for those tucked away too, especially for all those classicals. My parents have collected it over years. It's mostly classicals. Okay, there we go. But there are a few other things too. I love listening to it all. She opens the cabinet doors to give me a better view, and as I take a look, her dad appears behind us, nodding at the vinyl records. Some of those were my father's, a couple of rare ones too. Could have sold them, but once Haruka fell in love with music, I couldn't bear to part with them. Exactly, not for your sake, but for your daughter's sake. But also for your sake as well if your daughter is happy. He chuckles, looking sentimental. I guess they're valuable for a different reason now. Yep, they sure are. He smiles and goes back into the kitchen, leaving us to it. So I turn back to Haruka, who's now running her hand along the edges of the shelves. Ah, that's a lovely way of sorting things out in alphabetical order, or numerical order, or chronologically in order. We've got more in alphabetical order like in the library. I noticed that there's braille on the wood here too. Naturally. Probably put there by her parents in order to help her become more independent. I guess that's why she's quite decent at finding things in other places by herself, having had practice reading braille on shelves here. I let Haruka give me a little tour of the music collection, infusing about different composers and pieces, and the more she speaks, the more relaxed she grows, until she's almost talking too much. What do you mean too much? It's crazy how powerful the subject of music combined with the comfort of being at home is for her confidence. There are moments where I almost don't recognize her, with burns of anxiety and blindness practically absent. Her mum re-enters the room to take away the last remaining plates, and calls over to Haruka. Have you shown him your favourite thing yet? Favourite thing? Okay, in the previous time when I stated I've hypothesized it could be something of a romance genre thing, it could be that. Too embarrassed, or maybe it's a cherishable thing that she didn't want to open up initially. But if she knows what it is, then she would have said about the piece beforehand, like the name of it or who composed it. Ah! In reaction to her mom's suggestion, Haruka smiles and turns back to the cabinet. Her mom shoots us a knowing glare before heading back out of the room, leaving us alone once more. As I regard Haruka again, she seems to simply pause, deep in thought, and her expression is somewhat emotional. When she speaks, her voice is quite soft and full of significance. This is my prized possession. Even more than my flute. Oh gosh, that must be so valuable then. She takes a breath, seeming both joyful and melancholy somehow, and it spikes my curiosity tenfold. Do you remember in the library a little while ago when you asked me to show you my favourite piece, but I said I couldn't? Yeah? The moment had seemed strange to me at the time, and I hadn't been able to figure out why it wasn't possible, or why it had seemed to affect her so much. I guess I'm about to find out. Haruka reaches toward the top of the cabinet, removing something from it and clutching it delicately to her chest as she turns around to face me. This is what I'm talking about. She shifts the object in her hands to present it to me, and at first glance, it looks like an old, slightly tarnished wooden box. Its small frame sits on her palm unassumingly, but when I peer more closely at it, I see that a small metal handle is protruding from its side. A music box? Oh, I get what it is now. It's one of those old-fashioned music boxes. You wind it up and it plays a little song. To be honest, I'd totally forgotten how that they existed. I'm not surprised, especially with today's kids. They're probably not taught what a music box is. You just don't really see things like this these days. There we go, get the words out. It's the first thing my parents ever bought me, but I really loved. It might have been one of the earliest properly musical sounds I've ever heard. With that moving information hanging in the air, she smiles softly, some big feelings swim in her eyes, and then she takes hold of a tiny handle and begins to wind it gently. All very delicate things, a small object, but moving it ever so slightly. Thanks to how she presented the box to me as though it was the most sacred thing in existence, I almost hold my breath, feeling as though something huge about to happen. Slowly a fragile high-pitched sound begins to fill the air. Ah, that's a beautiful illustration, and she seems so happy as well. Also like the little teeth on the top as well, they're nice. The metallic tingling permeates the room, seeming to cast a spell on the both of us. For a moment, I forgot where we are, focusing only on Haruka and the little box in her hands. She closed her eyes in enjoyment as she holds the box, savouring her almost magical conjuration of the sound within. For however long it is that we stand there and listen, we bask in an unusual but wonderful tranquility that envelops us warmly. I don't dare speak to interrupt the music, but stay silent, watching Haruka with rapt interest, having been granted this little window into her private world, her innermost treasures. I feel incredibly far away from her, and yet at the same time, closer than I've ever been. Like we're standing nose to nose, not like that. Yeah, the weight of her feelings toward the box and the pretty melody it's producing has made this whole experience somewhat intimate. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm witnessing something special. We stay like this for some time, hanging in this moment for nearly blissful peace, and then the box loses its momentum, slowly coming to a halt. Haruka reluctantly opens her eyes, looking as though she could have listened to it forever. You didn't wait it up enough. The last notes ring out, leaving us in pure silence, and Haruka cups the box lovingly in her hands. That's my favourite piece of music in the whole world. It's what made me want to listen and play music for myself. I don't know what it is, whether it's a famous piece or from somewhere else, or maybe it's just a tune that whoever made this invented for the box itself. I have no idea. Ah, that's what makes her sad about it. Oh, okay, so she was embarrassed for a completely different reason from what I hypothesized. It wasn't due to the fact that it was romantic, but because it was something which she never found out the knowledge of. The composer, the make of the music box itself. She must have hoped to find sheet music for it so that she can play it herself, but considering how elusive the nature of the melody is, I guess she's never been able to trace it. A hint of regret appears on her face, though she still smiles. I wish I knew. I wish she knew too. It's really nice, Haruka. Thanks for showing me. I'm not sure what else I could say in the wake of such a deep moment, but Haruka simply nods quietly. Dad says you can see how a box works when you open it. She flips the lid of the box open, revealing all of the minute mechanisms on the inside, seeming impossibly small. Yeah, clockwork is usually incredibly small, and then when it comes to other stuff, even smaller possibly. She runs a finger over metal, appearing to marvel over how it feels. Yeah, I see it. She exhales a contented sigh, and just as she's moving to close the box again, I think I catch sight of something. For a very brief moment, it looks like there's some text on the underside of the lid, but Haruka's fingers are still in the way, so I can't see it properly. Unable to get a better glimpse, I feel a slight pain and disappointment as she finally closes the lid, placing the box back on the cabinet gingerly, with the care of someone handling a newly born baby. Taking a breath, she returns fully from her music-induced reverie and regards me with a smile. Anyway, want to listen to a CD or something? Hell yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you choose. Of course she's the one who can choose. I mean, she knows the music in here and we do not. She nods and turns towards the collection, browsing the shelves for something to put on, and I awkwardly creep closer, trying to reach the cabinet. My curiosity has gotten the better of me. Oh no, you better be careful with that music box. I feel kind of bad about essentially going behind her back like this, due to the fact that she can't see what I'm doing. Oh no. But stealthily I reach over and prise the lid of the music box open once more. be more careful about touching anything than I ever have in my life, especially because it's not my own thing, but it's a friend's thing. I just hope I don't accidentally hit the music handle and start winding up the music again by accident. There it is. I knew I'd seen something. Printed smoothly on top of wood. A single word looks back at me. And what would that word be? That's the name of this game. Venus, for goodness sakes. Lovely. Non-plurs, I close the lid again, so gently that it makes no sound. That's the way forward, leaving no evidence. Audibly as well, leaving no evidence. Luckily, it seems that I've gotten away with my secretive act. Venus? That doesn't mean anything to me, other than the planet, obviously. If you accidentally say Venus, you've got to make an excuse towards either Venus the planet, or Venus the Greek goddess. That doesn't mean anything to me, other than the planet, obviously. I've no idea why it would be printed on a music box. It could either be one or two things. Either... Okay, there's the more unlikely thing. It's the music itself, like the piece and the composer, either name. Or number two, it's the manufacturer that made, or the person or the company that made the music box itself. Before I could ponder it any longer, Haruka unknowingly diverts my attention, prizing a CD from a shelf. How about some Rachmaninoff? I play a couple of his pieces. Sounds good. I don't know German. I step back and give Haruka some space while she puts the CD on. Feeling suddenly bashful for having gotten so close to her in the first place. Not that she realised, she adjusted the volume as the music begins to play. And then she invites me to sit back at the table to listen. We take our seats again, turning them to face the stereo, and as she'd mentioned before, I'd come here... it does become a bit like being in a CD room at school, just the two of us and a set of speakers and some music. I enjoy the piece, and after a little while her parents re-enter the room, taking seats behind us. It momentarily startles me, having become so relaxed with Haruka showing me the music box that I'd temporarily forgotten how nervous I'd been. You don't mind if we join, do you? No, okay, my bad. I didn't mean to go through the text like that. No, of course not. No. Kakeru, for goodness sakes. I turn back around, and though it feels a bit weird now that her parents are back, my attention does begin to dissipate slightly. Before I sit there, gazing at the stereo as we listen, as though watching a TV, and the mellow atmosphere remains. Haruka mentions that this CD is one of her favourites, and she and her parents throw out little pieces of trivia about the pieces and the composer himself. They seem content to simply let me speculate, which is a relief. As I take in the music and conversation, I keep half an eye on the three of them, an odd feeling beginning to well up inside me again. I think it's just because they're so close as a family unit. It strikes me as being so... Well, I know what it is. I'm not half as close with mine as Haruka is with them, as hers. And being here is really hitting it home for me. A huge cavern of guilt opened up in my chest. Can I just take a moment to reread that? When I was a very young kid, I seem to remember being much more able to express myself as them. I talk to them about things, and show them love in silly ways like all little kids do. Nowadays, things couldn't be further from that. I've changed so much, and they must miss that little boy who used to shower them with affection. Watching Haruka and her parents has made me realise that I think I miss being that little boy too. Maybe I should try a little harder. My thoughts from earlier haven't really lifted my mind, swirling around endlessly as I'd made the journey home. So as I approach my front door, I consider them all seriously. To be that little boy again. Well, I can't go back in time, but perhaps, taking a breath, I head inside. Ouch. It doesn't take me long to slip off my shoes, but when I'm walking to the lounge, my parents are already waiting for me, seeming very eager to hear my account of my visit to Haruka's house. And... Kakeru, you really are home late. How'd it go? I get a feeling they've been worried about me. More so due to my late arrival. Okay, it I can only tell them the unlikely truth, but I sort of can't believe I'm saying it was pretty good. Very good. Both Mum and Dad burst into large smiles at my admission. That's great, son. Good job. I feel my face flush. Wonderful. I'm so proud of you, Kakeru. You've made so much progress. Indeed you have. They ask me about the evening and I give them an awkward and very brief summary of how it gone. If anything, they become more impressed with every detail I recount. By the end of it, they're beaming from ear to ear. They sound like a lovely family. I'd like to meet the parents one day. I'm sure my parents would love Haruka's. They're about as down to earth and accepting as anyone can be. What's with the hesitancy to go upstairs then? Just one little gesture. Nothing could possibly go wrong. They're my parents. Exactly. And turning back around to face them fully, I take a deep breath and with as much determination as I could muster, I raise my head. I catch my mum's eyes straight away, and instead of flinching looking away, I force myself to meet her gaze and keep it for a few seconds. In a way, it feels like hell, as though doing something as simple as this is incredibly wrong. But I try to convince myself that it's not the case. She seems taken aback as she maintains eye contact, not used to having me look at her for so long. I tear my eyes from her, moving them onto Dad, and we look at each other similarly. After a few seconds, I manage to utter a single sentence. Thanks for letting me go tonight. Ah, I'm shaking, but at the same time I allow myself to acknowledge I'm doing this. I'm giving them just a hint of respect that they've deserved all of this time, but I've denied them for my own selfish reasons. We're going to come back to Venus Improbable Dream in the next time around. I wanted this to be a little longer and also wanted to get through that little part of the game in one foul swoop with going to Haruka's parents and also seeing the aftermath as well when going back to Kakeru's house and obviously telling Kakeru's parents about the day ahead of it, well, the day that we had, and it was very nice. There's a very nice spin to the adventures that we're having so far. Things are fine looking up for both characters actually. They're both finding positivity in both of their companies through both the company itself and the similar hobbies that they have and the interests that they have in music. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and see you all in the next time of Venus Improbable Dream. Thank you all so much for watching and take care of yourselves.